Good evening. Hope everyone is doing well and had a beautiful Shabbos. Tonight we're learning Maseches Yoma Daf Zayin. As you can see, it is not the longest daf in Shas. However, Daf Testament Beis, that's a pretty meaty amud over there, as is Daf Yud. So I may overshoot a little bit tomorrow and do most of Testament Aleph to make the next night a little bit more reasonable. So some of the blot here are a little bit shorter. Let's get started. We're on the top of Daf Zayin Amud Aleph, starting exactly at the second line. As you will recall from Shabbos, we saw Machlokas Amoraim. This Machlokas Amoraim that we saw is on the bottom of Vav Amud Beis, and it's a question of whether or not we say Tuma is Hutra b'tzibur, or do we say Tuma is Dechuya b'tzibur? The Gemara, 2/3 of the way down on Vav Amud Beis, says that in the name of Rav Nachman, it is Mamish Hutra b'tzibur. So what that means is that when there's a case of Tuma, and it's for the tzibur, it's mamish mutter. We don't do any workarounds. We don't solve any problems. It's mutter as if he were to have been tahor, right? Totally fine. Masha ein kain. The dissenting opinion of Rav Sheshes is that it is dechuya, namely, okay, you're tameh, we understand, but because of the extenuating circumstances, we're going to be lenient. It's dachui, it's nidche, it's not ideal, but it is what it is. So we'll be makel. So which one is it? That machlokes is what we are going to be speaking about a little bit more at length today and a little bit more in depth. And with that as a background, Zayin Amud Aleph, second line. Amar Rav Sheshes mina amin Allah. Rav Sheshes, who is of the opinion that that Tuma is dechuya b'tzibur, that okay, what am I supposed to do? I'm stuck. Okay, what are the nebach? I'm allowed to do the korban because it's Tuma is dechuya b'tzibur, but it's not ideal. What's his mari makom? A beautiful and simple brisa. Says the Gemara, Tanya, the brisa writes, Haya omeru makriv minchas ha'omer. Let's say that there was a kohen who was being makriv. He was bringing the minchas ha'omer. He was bringing the barley flour for the omer, 16th of Nisan. The nitzmeis biyado. And all of a sudden he noticed or he saw something happen that it actually became tameh. So what should he do? So it says the Gemara, here's what he should do. Omer, he should say to someone, to people who are serving him, the Kohen should say to others around him, they should replace it. Why? Because the minchas omer is tameh. You should replace it with one that's tahor. What happens being ein sham elahi? What if the only minchas ha'omer you have for the hakravas ha'omer is exactly what the Kohen has in his hand and it just became tameh? So says the Gemara, omrim lo hevi pikeach ushesok. You should be smart and shut your mouth and bring the korban. So what does that mean in the Gemara's context here? What does it mean to say that you should try and change it if you can? Try and swap out the minchas omer. It became tameh. Try and swap out the minchas omer for a tahor, but if you can't, fine, we can still move ahead. That sounds like a nidche. That sounds like a dechuya. So it says the Gemara, katani mihas, the words that always mean, as you can see, we learned in the brisa. What did he initially say in the brisa about the minchas omer that became tameh? 5th, 6th line, Zayin Amud Aleph. He would say to someone, Omer, he would say, umevi'en acheres tachdeh. They'd bring him another one. So that shows you that it's not mutter, it's dachui. What he's supposed to do is dachui. Okay, so you tried to solve the problem, which shows you that it's dechuya. So that's a kashan of Nachman, because Rav Nachman was of the opinion that it's hutra. But if it's mamish mutter, so why did this brisa say, go try to solve that problem of the tamei minchas ha'omer? Says Rav Nachman, this is not a problem. Amar Rav Nachman modina hecha deika shirayim le'achila. I agree with you that when it comes to achila, when it comes to actually consuming food that's tamei, there I agree that it's dechuya. But when it's just about the hakrava, just about the korban, I don't agree. There I'm going to say it's hutra. So that's the distinction that we make. So therefore, according to Rav Sheshes is of the opinion that if you have a minchas ha'omer that's tameh, you have to try and replace it. If not, you can bring it because tuma dechuya b'tzibur. Fine. However, Rav Nachman says, I only agree with you in regards to achila. By achila of something that's tameh, b'tzibur, I agree that it's dechuya. We allow it if necessary. We try to work around it. But just to do the hakrava, no, I don't agree. There, I would still say that is tuma hutra b'tzibur. So that's question number one. That's the marimakom for Rav Sheshes and how Rav Nachman gets out of it. Let's try to ask against Rav Nachman yet again. A quarter of the way down, Zayin Amud Aleph, Meisive. We have a Tosefta. The Tosefta from Menachos. The Gemara says there as follows. Makriv, if someone were to be bringing the minchas parim, the elim ukvasim, the nitmes biyado. He's bringing the mincha of parim, elim, and kvasim, different animals, and it becomes tameh. So what does this brisa say? Omer, he tells other people to go find some other non-tameh, to go find some tahor stuff, and he tries to replace it. Similar to our previous Mishnah. sham elahi. And if all you have over there is that what you have in your hand, so then nebach, we're stuck and you're allowed to bring it. So that, what does that show you? My love, doesn't that show you parim elim ukevasim the chag? It shows you that these korbanos of the chag still are going to try and be swapped out. So it says the Gemara as follows. Take a look at Rashi, actually, Rashi's 10 lines down. Dibur hamaschil, my lab parim elim dechag. And here, Rashi introduces us to some concepts we're going to see in the Gemara. The Gemara assumes that we knew this. I didn't know this. Most of us are, it's not like standard information because we're not holding in the world of Tumah B'Tara in general. So here's what Rashi adds. Dibur hamaschil, my lab parim ve'elim dechag. Shehein, these are korban tzibor, uzmano kavua. So here's one of the things that we don't know about. When do we say tumas hutra b'tzibur? That's when the korban has a zman kavua, and that is when it is a korban tzibur. So that's indicated from Rashi here. So then Amar lach Rav Nachman, no, this brisa is not a problem. But the brisa says that you're supposed to swap out the tameh. So it shows you that it's techuya, because if it was hutra, why bother swapping it out? So Rav Nachman says you got the whole thing wrong. The parim that we're talking about in this brisa is par avodah zara, and afal gav the tzibur who, even though the par of avodah zara, if the tzibur were to have violated avodah zara, they would bring this par. But kevan delo kvia leizman mehadrina. This par that we're talking about in this Mishnah is not a regular korban dechag. It's not the korban that has a fixed zman and a fixed tzibur. In that case, he would Rav Sheshes and Rav Nachman would agree. So here, when it's the lo kviyel ezman mehadrina, when it's kevan the lo kviyel ezman, this animal doesn't have a fixed time to be brought. So therefore, we should try and solve that problem. What about the elim that are quoted in the brisa? So the Gemara says as follows: elim that are referred to in this Tosefta, be'elu shel Aaron. This be'elu shel Aaron. It's talking about the aisle of the Kohen Gadol. The afal gav the kviyel ezman. That yes, this korban has zman, but kevan the yachid hu mehadrinan. Here, it's not really for the tzibur; it's for a yachid, and therefore Rav Nachman would agree that you're mehadrinan. You try and solve the problem, but in general, he holds to mehutra b'tzibur. What about the kvasim that are mentioned in our Mishnah? The kvasim that are mentioned in our Mishnah is bekeves habayim omer. We're talking about the animal, the keves, that's brought with the korban omer, and we must be dealing the ikashirayim la'achila, that there's extra flour left over. And this is what we saw on the top of the page, where he held that if there's flour left over for achila, by achila we don't say tuma hutra b'tzibur, only by korbanos. And Rav Nachman remains unscathed from these two questions of the Gemara. We're a little bit more than halfway down. Question number 3 of the day. Zayin Manalef, a little bit more than halfway down. Mesideh. Dam shenitma v'zarko. We saw this a couple of times, I think. We saw this in Psachim. So far we've only seen it in Psachim. Says the Gemara, Dam shenitma v'zarku. Let's say that a Kohen, is about to do the Zrikas Adam. We're familiar with the 4 steps of bringing a korbanos. It's the shchita, holacha, zrika. I skipped one. The shchita, kabbalah, holacha, zrika. You do the shchita, you collect the blood, you walk to the right place in the mizbech, and then you actually do the zrika. So it says the Gemara, dam shenitma v'zarku. Let's say between the time you did the shchita and the time you did the zrika, the dam became tameh. So it says the Gemara, b'shogeg hortza. If you did it without knowing, so then the halacha is hortza, that zrikas hadam is considered to be acceptable. Ritzei, right? We ask Hashem to be ritzei, to accept our prayers. So this is the same thing. It's hortza, that if you do the zrikas hadam, if the dam is tamei and it's b'shogeg, that's hortza. B'mezi lo hortza. But if you did it intentionally, it's not. What does that show you? B'shogeg, it's mutter. So that shows you the dechuya, which is that's the shita of Rav Sheshes, and that's again a question against Rav Nachman. So answers the Gemara on behalf of Rav Nachman, 2/3 of the way down. Hitanya hahi. That brisa, which says that b'shogeg hortza, that if you do the zrikas hadam when the dam is tamei, that was only talking about the korban of a yachid, but not the korban of a tzibur. Tashma, let's ask another question. Alma hatzitz meratze. We've learned about this before as well. We saw this in Maseches Psachim on Daf Peyam and Beis. There it says, how does the tzitz help? We know that the tzitz has this power to be mechaper, to create ritzui, to make something that would otherwise be tameh, to make it tahor. So it says the Gemara as follows, Tashma, this brisa is quoted to say as follows, Alma hatzitz meratze, al hadam ve'al habasar ve'al hacheleb, bein shenitma, bein b'shogeg, bein b'mezid, bein b'ones, bein b'ratzon, bein b'yachid, bein b'tzibur. This brisa tells us that the tzitz is meratze. It says the Gemara, a brilliant diuk, so simple. If you think Rav Sheshes that tuma is heter b'tzibur, so then lama li ritzui. What needs to be fixed? If Tuma is mamish heter, then why does the Torah tell us that the tzitz is meratzeh? The tzitz that the Kohen Gadol wears, it fixes fixes what problem? It's not a problem. If Tuma is hutra b'tzibor, then it's mutter. You don't need the tzitz to be meratzeh. It's mutter. So this brisa is a kasha against the shita that holds Tuma hutra b'tzibor. Lama li ritzui. Amar lach Rav Nachman, what would he say? Kiktani had tzitz meratzeh adi yachid. It must be talking about the korban of a yachid, but had it been on a tzibor, you're taka right. Maybe we don't need ritzui. Another possible answer, afilu tema b'tzibor. Had it been that the need of this korban was for the tzibor, still b'hanach lo kviyah lehuzman. Maybe it was a korban that wasn't meant to be at a fixed time, and under those circumstances, we would agree that it's techuya and not hutra. Another question the Gemara asks, I think it's this question 5 of the day, bottom of Zayin Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the bottom. The pasuk says, "V'nasa Aharon es avon hakodashim." It's a long pasuk. The pasuk reads as follows. They were talking about the tzitz. This is in Parshas Sefer Shmos. V'haya al meitzach Aaron, just reading the pasuk in full. V'haya al meitzach Aaron, he would wear it on his head. V'nasa Aharon es avon hakodashim, and the tzitz that he was wearing would help to remove the averos, the avonos of the kodshim. Asher yakdishu b'nei Yisrael l'chol matnos kodshehem. It would fix all the korbanos that needed fixing. V'haya al mitzcho tamid liratzon. It was always on his head. What does always mean? We're going to discuss that in the Gemara. Lifnei Hashem. So says the Gemara as follows. Meisive, 4 lines from the bottom. V'nosa Aharonas avon hakodashim. He was wearing the tzitz, it would solve problems. Who knows? When he was wearing the tzitz, which problems did it solve? Says the Gemara. If you thought that it was im avon pigul, if you thought that it was talking about pigul, which we know that if a person has a machsheves pigul, he has a thought that about this korban, that it's for the wrong person or in a different location, whatever the machsheves pigul is, harei kvar ne'amar, there the pasuk already says lo yeratzeh. The tzitz won't help in that case of pigul. If you have a machsheves pigul, the tzitz is not going to help you. So that can't be what the pasuk means when it's talking about when the pasuk says v'nasa Aharon savona kodashim. Can't be talking about pigul. And as well, 2 lines from the bottom and last line as well. V'im avon nosar. If you're talking about nosar, which is food, korbanos that have passed their expiration date, harei kvar nemar lo yechashev. That also doesn't work as we turn to the top of Zayin Amud Beis. So therefore, ha'eno nosei, what must it therefore be when the pasuk says that it's nosei avon, that the tzitz is meratzeh, that it removes a halachic impurity to make it tahor? What must it be talking about? Ella avon tuma shehutra mechlala b'tzibor v'kasha the Rav Sheshes. It must be that the tzitz is helping for tuma, and that means that tuma seems to be hutra b'tzibor. This is the kasha and Rav Sheshes who holds that it's techuya. So it says the Gemara, you're right. You're right. This whole machlokes between Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes, we've presented it as a machlokes in the Amoraim. However, it's actually a multi-generational machlokes. It's also machlokes in the Tanoim. We're on the top of Zayin Amud Beis, 2nd line. Says the Gemara, Tanoihi. Really, the machlokes of Tuma Hutra B'tzibor and Tuma Dechuya B'tzibor is a machlokes Amoraim. Just to review one more time to try and be as clear as possible. The machlokes is as follows. When something is being done for the tzibor and Tuma occurs, so we know that we're allowed to still do that korban if there's Tuma. Tuma Hutra B'tzibor or Tuma Dechuya. We don't know why. Is it because it's mamish mutter? Or no, it's not mutter, but b'di'eved, we're makil because of the circumstances. Which one is it? Mutter means we don't have to intercede, and not mutter b'di'eved means we should try and intercede if we can, right? So that's what we're really arguing about here. So we just looked at the various shitas within the machlokas of Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes, and now we're kicking it up a notch, or really historically going back to the times of the Tanoim to say that really this is a machlokas in the Tanoim as well. The Tanya, the Brisa writes, quoted in Sanhedrin, and we learned this in Psachim as well. Tzitz, the Kohen Gadol wears the tzitz, bein sheyeshno al mitzcho, bein she'eno al mitzcho meratzeh. Even if the Kohen Gadol's not wearing the tzitz, af al pikein, it's still meratzeh. What does that mean? That if you have a korban that has a problem, and the Kohen Gadol is occupied, and the tzitz is hanging outside, it's a mamash, a davar kodesh, you couldn't bring it into the bathroom. The Gemara is going to discuss this later. If he leaves it outside hanging on a peg, ritzui. Your tamei korban is fixed. He does not have to be wearing it. It's not powered by the Kohen Gadol. It's powered by Kadosh Baruch Hu, so it has kedusha and it's meratzeh. So that's shita number 1, Divi Reb Shimon. However, 5th line of Zayin Amud Beis, the dissenting opinion, Rabbi Huda Omer, no. Odeyu al mitzcho meratzeh. While the Kohen Gadol is wearing the tzitz, that is what powers the tzitz. And therefore, if the Kohen Gadol is wearing the tzitz, it's meratzeh, then it solves problems, it gets rid of tumah. However, ein odehu al mitzcho, ein meratzeh, if the Kohen Gadol is not wearing the tzitz, then Eino Meratze, then if you have a Tamei Korban, you better wait till he comes back from wherever he is, because we want him to put the tzitz back on so it can have the power to undo the tumah that you have in your Korban. So the Brisa continues and shows a dialogue between these two shitas. Again, shita number one of Rav Shimon, it doesn't make a difference where the tzitz is. The halacha is that it generates ritzui. That whatever tummy problem you have with your korban, as long as there is a tzitz that exists, probably has to be in the mikdash area, I don't know. As long as there is a tzitz, it generates ritzui. Rabbi Yehuda says no, only when he's wearing it. So then Amar Lo Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says Kohen Gadol yochiach. What are you talking? Kohen Gadol b'yom kippurim yochiach. She'eino dei al mitzchol meratzi. He doesn't wear it all day, mamish. Yet all of Klal Yisrael gets kapara. You ask, you get. You ask, you get on Yom Kippur. It's in dishing out candy at Simchas Torah. It's obvious. It's pasha. You get kapara. So we see that there's a ritzui afal pita. The Kohen Gadol doesn't wear it all day. Amar Lo Rabbi Yehuda. He says that's not a good argument. Hanach leKohen Gadol b'yom kippurim shetuma hutcher lo b'tzibur. What do we see about Rabbi Yehuda? It says explicitly in the Brisa. So what does Rabbi Yehuda hold? Tuma hutcher b'tzibur. What does that imply about Rav Shimon? He must hold tuma d'chuy b'tzibur. So it says the Gemara halfway down. Michlal. This implies that Rav Shimon savar Tuma dechuya hi b'tzibur, period. So now we see our machlokas between Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda fundamentally in the Tanaim, based on the discussion of the tzitz, of whether or not the Kohen Gadol can be meratze with the tzitz while it's only on his head, or even when it's off of his head. Machlokas Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda is also at its root a machlokas about whether or not we say Tuma is hutra b'tzibur or Tuma is dechuya b'tzibur. This machlokas is quoted in Shas. I'm just ballparking, probably 20 or 30 times. This machlokas. It's a very common machlokas, so it's good to have some of the basics. And now the Gemara, 2 lines before the wide lines on Zayin and Beis, is going to give a little qualification about where these Tanaim and Amorim have their machlokas. Amar Abaye says as follows: B'nishbar hatzitz. When Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon are arguing, they're not arguing about when the tzitz is broken. God forbid. Let's say the tzitz cracks, right? One of the kids. He's playing with the thing, he drops it, he jumps on it, he throws it into the mizbeach, and it's ruined. So then says the Gemara as follows: Rabbi, b'nishbar hatzitz. If the tzitz is broken, the garment that the Kohen Gadol is wearing is broken. The only way that tzitz can be meratze is if it's in its perfect form. It can't be broken. Everyone agrees to that. However, kipligi de tali b'sichta. Where is the machlokas between Rav Shimon and Rav Yehuda of Tumas Hutra B'tzibur is Tuma Dechuya B'tzibur? Where is their machlokas of whether or not this thing works? That is when it's hanging on a hook. He had to go to the bathroom. He went to sleep. Whatever the Kohen Gadol is doing. Rav Yehuda Savar Al Meitzach V'Nasa. Look at the pasuk. The pasuk writes that it has to be on your forehead. Good. For Rav Shimon Savar, what does he say? No. Tamid l'ratzon lifnei Hashem. It's always going to give you kapar even if it's not on his head. So my tamid, how do we define tamid? Ilema tamid al mitzcho, literally 24/7. If that's literally what it means, says the Gemara, mimishkach asla. That's so unreasonable. You're never going to have a scenario where he wears it around the clock. He's a human being. He's not a malach Hashem tzivakos mamish. He has to go to the bathroom. People go to the bathroom every day. The Mishnah Berurah counts in his Mea Brachos B'chol Yom how many times you say it. You have to say in the morning, you have to say Asher Yotzer. You're supposed to go to the bathroom. The Rambam writes that one should be bodek l'nekavav. They have to check if they have to go to the bathroom before davening. Otherwise, that's not right. And if you have to go to the bathroom and you hold it in during davening, that's not a good davening. You need to go to the bathroom. So what kind of mimishkach asla that the Kohen Gadol is not going to go to the bathroom? But even so, there's going to be ritzui. Not every korban happens while he's out of the bathroom. Sometimes he's busy. So that's what the machlokas is about. Umilo boy meinam. He's not going to take a nap. He's a human. Fine. So therefore, ela tamid miratzo. Tamid literally means tamid. That not tamid he wears it. Tamid that there's ritzui. That's a shita there. The Rabbi Yehuda nami haksiv tamid. You Rabbi Yehuda say that he has to wear it on his head for there to be ritzui. Then what does tamid mean for you? Tamid means always. But how do you darshan the word? You say the only time there's ritzui is when the Kohen Gadol wears the tzitz. But if he's not wearing the tzitz, then what does the word tamid mean? Tamid, no, says the Gemara. No, there can't be a hesach hadas from the tzitz. Kid Rabba bar Rav Huna. Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna. Chayiv adam lemashmish b'tfilav b'chol shah v'shah kal v'chomer mitzitz. When a person is wearing their tefillin, they should regularly be checking and touching their tefillin. So the Mishnah Berurah here explains in Siman Kaf Ches think it's kafches. He says here on the side kafches. He says by ukshartam, not mamish all day. Like that's not what it means. Just to keep touching your tefillin. It means to touch them at the right times. By the way, if your tefillin aren't covered in things, I would not recommend touching them all day. You'll rub down the corners, right? They are supposed to be beribua. We have halachos. You try to be careful. You should try on your tefillin shalyad to get a cover on it so it doesn't lose its shape. Fine. But here the Gemara says chayav adam lamashmish b'tefillah kol shavashah. Where do we learn that from? Kal v'chomer mitzit. Turning to the top of Chesed Aleph. What's the kal v'chomer? And we'll stop with this tonight. Umatzitz she'ein bo ela askara achas. Amra Torah al mitzcho tamid shelo yasiach da'ito mimenu. By the tzitz, it says Kodesh Lashem. It only has the Kodesh Baruch Hu's name one time. And afal pikein, we see that you're not allowed to be misiach das, and there it says al mitzcho tamid shelo yasiach da'ito mimenu. Tefillin sheyesh ben azkaros harbe. By tefillin, God, I don't even know how many times it says the word Hashem. Many, many times. It's the Shema. In the first pasuk of Shema, it says Hashem's name twice, and then the next pasuk after says Hashem Elokecha. It says it a lot of times. Allah has kama v'kama tefillin sheyesh ben askaros harbe. Allah has kama v'kama. Of course, obviously. So that's how Rabbi Yehuda understands the word tamid. Rabbi Yehuda, who's of the opinion that really the only time the tzitz is miratzeh is when the Kohen Gadol is wearing it. What does he do with the word tamid? To teach you not to have a hetzach hadas, just like is the din by tefillin. That's why we don't wear tefillin at night. We're afraid that a person will be menamnim, they'll fall asleep, and when you're sleeping, you can't have kavanah. So all the greatest stories of these great tzaddikim, you're going to have surgery, and if we give you medication and fall asleep, you might die. He says, no, just give me my tefillin. I won't fall asleep in my tefillin. It's like halachic commitment to making sure that we have a guf naki, to make sure that we have no hesach hadas, a very lofty level. Wishing you all a beautiful night. We'll pick up from the top of Chesed Aleph, 4 lines down tomorrow night. Have a great night.